Don't miss out on important news. Our videos are being deleted. So if you don't want to be cut off from honest news, take a moment to sign up for our newsletter at newsletter.ntd.com so you don't lose access to NTD. Go to newsletter.ntd.com to sign up for our evening newsletter.
20 Republican state attorneys general sent a letter to President Biden and congressional leaders urging them not to expand the Supreme Court. They called this a naked political power grab. NTD's Lin Lin has more.
Earlier this month, Biden created a commission to study potential reforms of the Supreme Court. Days later, House Democrats introduced a bill to expand the court from 9 seats to 13. 20 attorneys general expressed their opposition to packing the court in a letter sent to Biden as well as Senate and House leaders. The attorneys argue these moves are a coordinated attempt to justify a naked political power grab by the leaders of Congress and the president. While the House Democrats argue the bill would help restore balance to the court, which currently has a 6-3 conservative majority, Republicans warn that court packing could threaten America's fundamental freedoms.
Unfortunately, today's Democratic Party is a lot more radical than the Democratic Party used to be, and they're perfectly happy to tear down the institutions of democracy.
They say court packing is ultimately a political move.
To make the court liberal so that when they fail at the ballot box, they can get the Supreme Court to enact their agenda.
Arizona Attorney General Mark Brnovich also wrote a separate letter to Arizona's Democratic senators to make the case against expanding the court. Lin Lin, NTD News.
With the recent flurry of spending proposals, we take a step back to assess the United States' financial health. NTD's Christina Kim speaks to the head of a transparency watchdog to discuss national debt and what it could mean for the average American.
The Treasury Department estimates America's national debt to be $28 trillion. But a report from Truth in Accounting estimates the true value to be over $123 trillion. That's because the two groups count different things as debt. Adam Andrzejewski is the founder and CEO of the nonprofit OpenTheBooks.com, which tracks all government spending. He says the $28 trillion is real-time debt, while the $123 trillion figure is more of a long-term bird's-eye view.
The benefit of the Truth in Accounting report is that it details how politicians are conferring benefits that aren't funded and actually have no hope of ever being funded. The reason politicians do this is to get reelected.
He said both Republicans and Democrats contributed to the ballooning debt, but it's not getting any better.
It's our children and our children's children that are going to have to pay it back.
For example, President Biden proposed $6 trillion in spending within his first 100 days in office. Andrzejewski says the U.S. has never seen anything like this in its whole history. And he says there's a lot of wasteful spending in the bills that are proposed.
The CARES Act a year ago provided $80 billion for our nation's schools. It was so much money they couldn't even spend $10 billion of it. And then a month ago, the American Rescue Act provided in one fell swoop another $128 billion for K through 12 schools. And the Congressional Budget Office says that 1/3 of that won't even be spent till after the next election. But then in Biden's infrastructure bill, he wants to provide another $100 billion for K through 12 schools. This is crazy.
He outlines 3 ways the growing national debt is likely to impact Americans.
The first thing is that everything you own today will be worth less. The money in the bank, your house, and that's because they've printed a bunch of money and devalued the value of your assets in real time.
Second, he says the cost of goods will be much more expensive. And third, he says taxes will go up, threatening Americans' prosperity in the future. Andrzejewski encourages people to educate themselves, speak up, and hold politicians accountable. He says at minimum, politicians should be given the time to read every page of a spending bill and publish the bills online so people can take a look before any vote is cast. Christina Kim, NTD News.
And the House has passed a number of Democrat-backed bills that are unlikely to pass the Senate due to lack of Republican support. Now they want to change the Senate rules so they can pass their bills with no GOP support at all. NTD's Melina Weiskup has the story.
The House has passed many Democrat-backed bills that generally lack Republican support, such as federalizing voting rights, promoting gun control, expediting citizenship for illegal immigrants, and police reform to allow individual people to sue officers. President Biden supports all these bills, so the only thing stopping them from becoming law is the Senate filibuster. That's a rule that requires at least 60 votes for a bill to pass the Senate. Right now, that means these largely Democrat bills would need the support of at least 10 Republicans to pass. Some Democrats now calling to overhaul the filibuster.
We must not allow the Senate Republicans to deny our people everything we need to thrive.
They claim it's a racist procedure from the Jim Crow era, echoing the words of former President Obama. However, Obama in 2005 defended the filibuster.
But today's Democrats, on every topic, they go to race. And if you oppose whatever radical agenda they're trying to push, they call you a racist. The Democrats filibustered hundreds of times.
What's more, Democrats used the filibuster over 300 times in 2020, only now to dub it as a racist procedure.
Instead, it is a vestige of Jim Crow.
I would like to work with my Democratic colleagues on police reform. So to my Democratic colleagues, playing the race card won't work.
Representative Jayapal says she fears the Democrats will lose their majority if they can't pass these bills through the Senate.
They're either not going to come out and vote for you next time or they're going to vote for the other guy.
And they say they're talking strategy with the Senate leadership on how they can get this done. Some warn that abolishing the filibuster could strip the minority of their voice for years to come.
The filibuster is the one tool that protects the minority party, no matter whether it's Republicans or Democrats, and people miss that.
Senator Graham said Trump actually encouraged Republicans to eliminate the filibuster when they had the majority, but they rejected the move. Now, whether or not the Senate filibuster can actually be abolished lies in the hands of two moderate Democrats. That is Senator Manchin and Senator Sinema. But the House Democrats pushing to end the filibuster say they have a strategy for how to rally these moderate Democrats to their side. That is, they plan to go to the states of these two senators and get the voters to put pressure on the two moderate Democrats until they comply and support ending the filibuster. Reporting in Washington, D.C., Melina Weiskup, NTD News.
A county in Missouri recently discussed regulating wind farms. Virtually all of them oppose wind energy. NTD's Don Tran reports.
In Boone County, Missouri, the possibility of new wind farms is not welcomed by locals. County officials propose new and strict regulations for wind energy development. One attendee said she's worried about the health effects that windmills have on people.
It's on marginalized people who, children and elderly people and pregnant women. And I know that I can move, and I will move if I need to. So my partner has heart disease, and I know that this would hurt him, and I'm not willing to stay and watch it hurt him. But I also know that there's plenty of people who can't afford to move.
With the new regulations, wind energy companies would only be allowed in agricultural or industrial zones, and they need to request for specific permission for an overlay zone that lets them use the land for wind turbines. They'd also be required to estimate the amount of property, sales, and other taxes their wind farm project would generate. Goodman said she used to be an advocate for wind energy.
I was pushing for the governments, why aren't we doing this quicker? We've got to do this. We've got to save the planet, but this doesn't save the planet. That's the lies. It actually brings on planetary destruction quicker. And so I want to stand up against that.
She also said she lost some old friends over the issue.
I've been friends with for 40 years, and I've marched with them against war and against, environmental problems. And now they turn against me when I tell them these things, and they don't believe it. And it's like, look, here's all this information. And instead, they're quoting back to me information that's put out by the wind companies.
In December, 13 landowners in Howard County with a total of 8,000 acres had signed contracts agreeing to lease land to a wind energy company for turbines. The owners of about 3,000 acres in Boone County had signed similar contracts. Don Tran, NTD News.
Oklahoma State Senate lawmakers passed a bill this week pushing back against presidential executive orders. While Democrats call the bill a political stunt, Republicans are divided on the original language of the State House bill. Here's more from our reporter Estelle Lynn at the Oklahoma State Capitol.
On Tuesday, Oklahoma State Senate passed a bill that would allow the state attorney general to request exemptions from any executive orders issued by President Joe Biden if those orders are determined to be unconstitutional. Several state lawmakers voiced their support for this bill to protect Oklahomans from potential overreach of federal laws signed by President Biden.
Those of us that are pro-life had to be stunned when one of the first moves of this president through executive order was to allow your tax dollars to be spent for abortions, not just in the United States, but outside this country.
The original version of the bill, passed by 79 members of the State House of Representatives, would even give the majority of state lawmakers the power to directly nullify presidential executive orders. However, this nullification clause was met with opposition not only from the Democrats, but also the Republican Senate leader. Republican State Senate Pro Temp Greg Treat issued a statement saying, as originally written, HB 1236 gives people false hope because it is an unconstitutional nullification bill that clearly violates separation of powers. The 10th Amendment says powers not delegated to the federal government are reserved to the states. However, the Supremacy Clause of the U.S. Constitution states the federal Constitution takes precedence over state laws.
So there's some who just really want to push back on federal overreach, as I desire, and I think the majority of members of this body wish to do, and it's well within our right to do it. But you do not push back on the federal government by willfully violating the very Constitution that we're sworn to uphold.
Treat removed the original nullification clause and proposed to create a special task force under the state attorney general's office to evaluate the constitutionality of presidential executive orders. And the new unit would be funded with $10 million each year to carry out its mission.
This bill does what the bill that came over from the House did not do. It has teeth in it. Have we ever put $10 million behind a legal remedy to push back on the federal government? Today you have an opportunity to do just that.
Treat's changes to the bill placed him under fire from fellow Republicans. Hundreds of activists from gun rights and other conservative groups rallied at the state capitol on Tuesday to criticize him for watering down the bill. Several co-authors, including Senator Nathan Dahm, removed their names from the amended bill. Treat says his changes are necessary to push the bill through. If the bill crashes, there won't be any other vehicle to protect Oklahomans from federal laws that violate the separation of powers. Estelle Lynn, NTD News, Oklahoma.
Amid calls to defund the police, the progressive mayor of Los Angeles is instead increasing law enforcement's funding, but only by a fraction. This as crime rates in the city continue to climb. The president of LA's Police League suggests this is caused by last year's police cut.
To pledge
Los Angeles Mayor Eric Garcetti is calling for a modest 3% increase in law enforcement funding. He's allocating $1.76 billion to the Los Angeles Police Department, or LAPD. This is up from the $1.71 billion that council approved last summer, when they cut the police budget by $150 million. This slash came after protests and pressure to defund the police following the death of George Floyd. Garcetti made it clear he won't be caving to these ongoing pressures Tuesday, saying, "If you want to abolish the police, you're talking to the wrong mayor." However, the policing budget is still lower than the amount he budgeted for the LAPD last year. Craig Lally, president of the Los Angeles Police League, told the Los Angeles Times that while Garcetti's proposed budget does make initial investments to add back officers to patrol the streets, it fails to address the significant damage caused by last year's cut. According to the LA Times, an aide to the mayor said the decision to boost the police budget was partly prompted by rising crime. LAPD crime statistics for last week show shootings are up 80% compared to the same period last year. Homicides are up 28%. And aggravated assaults have increased by 14%. The budget also includes tens of millions of dollars for initiatives aimed at preventing crime, like improving mental health, youth development, and reducing gang activity. The spending plan still requires city council approval.